Lesson planning consists of four parts. First being preparation. So even before you meet the student, you find out what your topic is and you start to prepare. Presentation is when you're actually giving the student the information. Application, student gets to practice what you've just taught them. And then finally, evaluation. This is the testing at the end to show you and your student that they have learned what you hope to teach them. I actually like to begin with the end in mind. So I like to think about what evaluation I'm going to use. To me, I think this is the most important step when you're lesson planning because you really want to make sure that your student learned what you taught them. To make it simple, we're going to use one of two questions. So either show me how to do something or tell me about something. Show me is going to be better for those movement skills that you might teach somebody, and tell me is going to work a lot better for academic stuff. And finally, does it need to be in writing? The evaluation itself. There are times when you may want a paper trail to show that the student has actually learned something in particular. For example, a lot of times at the end of the first jump course, we will give a student a written exam so that we have documentation that they have sat through the course and they have learned the basics that they've needed for that first jump. So let's go through some examples of what we might want to see for an evaluation. If I'm teaching somebody what a basic landing pattern is, what do I want them to be able to do at the end? Personally, I'd like to be able to hand them a piece of paper or possibly even an aerial photo where it has their landing target as well as some sort of wind indicator. And I want to see that they can draw a landing pattern, note the key altitudes at which they're supposed to make their turns, and also show me where their holding area should be in relation to all this. If I'm teaching somebody how to adjust their fall rate, so either fall faster or fall slower, I would like to be able to put my student up on some sort of hopefully comfortable elevated surface, and then I'm going to use maybe this wooden doll or just some other visual that I may have so that if I raise it above them so that they need to go slower, I just see that they automatically show me the correct body position for slow fall. And if I then use the visual and put it down below them, then they show me how they're going to get into a fast fall position. So when it comes to preparation, I like to think first about who am I teaching? What do they already know about this topic? Maybe they know nothing. Maybe they already know a bit about something. For example, if I'm teaching tracking, they may have never tried tracking before, or they may have already had one or two jumps where they've done tracking already. The what is going to be how in depth do I need to go about this? If we go back to the idea of tracking, if this is the very first time that they've ever tried to track, then I'm going to show them a very basic body position. However, if they've practiced tracking a few times and they seem to be pretty good at it, then I can start showing them how to modify that basic tracking position so that they can get into a flatter track. The when is going to be your time. How much time will this topic take? Some topics are going to take a lot longer than other ones. Where? What's the best place that I should teach this? And would it be helpful if I could get any assistance? And finally, why? What goals are my student and I, what are we working towards? And when we're talking about goals, we would like them to be SMART goals. So now let's talk about what does that even mean? The S in SMART stands for specific. The M is measurable, A is achievable, R is relevant, and finally we've got T, which means that it is a time-bound goal. For adult learners in particular, the R is going to be super important. They want to know, how is this relevant? Like, why am I learning how to do this? How does it fit into the big picture of things and get me closer to what I ultimately want? So for example, a lot of times at the beginning of the year, people have this vague intention to they just want to get healthier this year. If we were to make this into a SMART goal, it might look something like this. I want to lose 10 pounds by June 30th by exercising for at least 30 minutes 3 times a week, focusing on cardio as well as strength training. So here we can see that this is a very specific goal. It's very measurable because they want to lose 10 pounds and they're going to do that by exercising for 30 minutes 3 times a week. Hopefully it's achievable. Depends, I guess, on how long they have before June 30th here. Relevant if they do actually want to get healthier than to feel better or for whatever reason, then this would be a relevant goal for them. And it is time bound because they gave themselves a deadline of June 30th. It turns out that USPA has done most of the legwork here, and they're the ones that have come up with the SMART goals for each of the categories. But let's take a look again at landing patterns. If I wanted to prepare, I first want to think about who am I teaching? And in this case, the basic landing pattern is going to be for a first jump course student. And most likely they're not really going to have any skydiving background. But for example, if they're a pilot, then they would have a lot of information already about landing patterns. What am I teaching? I'm just going to teach the basic landing pattern, so there's no need to go more in depth than that. It's going to take me probably 20 to 30 minutes to do this. And ideally, I'd like to do a little bit of classroom instruction and then finally go outside. It'd be helpful to have an aerial photo. And then my goals, in the end, I want my student to be able to make their own landing pattern based off a given wind direction, and they need to know the key altitudes in that landing pattern. This actually comes from, again, USPA in the IRM 5-3. You'll find standards for your first jump course students. If we go back to adjusting fall rate, who would I be teaching this to? This is going to be a coach jump. So this is going to be a student that has probably 10 to 12 jumps or so. We need to teach them to be able to go faster as well as slower. This is a relatively quick topic. It might take me 10 minutes. Where do I want to do this? Ideally, I'd like to have a training area where I have some sort of elevated surface that is comfortable because I'm going to have them laying down on it and arching. What are our goals? Well, the students needs to decide what body position to use when they see that their coach is either above or below them, and this could be up to 5 feet. And where are the goals for this one going to come from? Well, this is category G, actually G2 in particular, and this is in Sim Chapter 1, or you can even look at the A license progression card to see what a student would need to get signed off on their advancement criteria for category G. When it comes to presenting the material, the less you say, the better it usually is. You want to start by telling them what they're going to learn and why. So again, make it relevant. How does it fit into the big picture? We want to start off by presenting all of what we're planning on doing. So if we're talking about doing a particular jump, we want to show them the entire dive flow. And then we want to break it down into parts, train those parts, and then at the end, put it all back together again. Whenever you're giving demonstrations, make sure that you're demonstrating perfectly. You want to be showing them exactly what you hope to see from them. Perhaps you may want to think about using a video. And this leads us to the application portion, where the student gets to practice. You may have heard that practice makes perfect, but that's not actually true. Practice is going to make things permanent. So if you want to make sure that they are perfect, you need to practice that way. Motor skills in general require a lot of thinking at the beginning, and then once we practice them enough, then they become automatic. If you had the opportunity to learn how to drive a manual transmission, I'd like you to take just a moment and think about what that was like when you were first learning it. Most likely, you had to think a lot about every single step. And then after a few weeks or maybe months of practice, you're no longer thinking about any of those steps anymore. It had just become automatic. In the beginning, when our students are practicing, then we need to be hands-on so that whenever they're making a mistake, we can quickly step in and correct it. Finally, as they keep practicing and it becomes automatic, then we can be hands-off. So how do we know if we've done enough practice? Simply, our student should be able to show us or tell us whatever we want, and we should not have to offer any more prompts. And this brings us back around to the evaluation. This is crucial for the teacher because you're getting feedback from your student. Remember, we're going to use show me or tell me depending on the situation. Whenever we ask a question, we want to give the student time to think. We need to give that space so that they can go back and retrieve the information. And in the end, we want to switch up the order and try to give realistic scenarios. So, for example, if I'm practicing a new dive flow with a student, I want to make sure that we practice that dive flow perfectly. But then once they have that down, I want to put in a few realistic scenarios. So, for example, if I'm teaching somebody how to move forward to take grips on me, then I'm going to give them a scenario where they're struggling to move forward because I want to see that in this case that they check their altimeter, for example. So once they know everything perfectly, then throw in a few more scenarios to make it more realistic. So that ends the general theory that we need to get through. So we've talked about, who our students are, some of the challenges they might face, and we've talked about lesson planning in general. So now we're going to move towards actually putting this into practice. So what are we teaching? USPA has come up with the Integrated Student Program, or ISP, and this is a progression for students no matter which method they're using. So there's AFF, there's static line, instructor assisted deployment, IAD, and there's also tandem jumps that a student could use to get certified. So we can see down the left, there's categories A through H, and then across the top, we can see that each category is broken up into skill and knowledge sets by exit and free fall, canopy flight, equipment, emergency reviews, rules and recommendations, and spotting and aircraft. You will see students in category A when you're helping out teach the first jump course, and then also in categories F, G, and H. Unless you happen to be at a drop zone that is doing static line IAD stuff, you might see category C, D, and E as well. But typically category A, F, G, and H is where coaches are going to be interacting with students. It's very tempting to give a lot of information when especially in the first jump course, but as you can see, the ISP is designed to build one category on top of another. So what's up next? We are actually going to go through first jump course topics, and you will finally get your first chance to teach.